All right, let's do it live on a Football Friday, a NFL Championship Football Friday with the two conference championship games this weekend. Let me ask you a question. Is it possible to have too many luminaries on one show?
It's a loaded show. Great to talk to you for the first time today. What a real treat.
Real treat. Yeah, I haven't heard your voice at all yet.
Yeah, to be able to speak with you now. Yeah. But, I mean, we've got luminaries as big as they get. I think it's also a first for certainly Cleveland Browns Daily, but could be the first for any team-run show in the history of the National Football League that we will have the general manager of another franchise in studio live on our show.
I was just thinking as you said that out loud, like we haven't had AB yet on this show.
No.
Our general manager has not been on this show yet since the end of the season.
Our work on MVD, though,
but
more than speaks for itself. And I think there's a reason why.
Maybe it's a guest swap.
Yeah.
That
we'll get AB on MVD.
AB will join us at MVD, and then we'll do, we'll take care of Kwesi today. So he will join us at 2:30. That'll be fun.
It's going to be great.
I was thinking about this on the way in. It saddens me greatly because all I've heard is spectacular things about him from, everybody. I've heard that he's his own version of Senior Swag, all of these things. And yet, because of COVID, I have never met the man. So it'll be hello and goodbye at the same time. So
you're going to get a
sadness in that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be like you're going to go and have like a nice bite of the king of all the meats, and they're going to take the plate away from you, so you can't have it anymore. That's it.
Sad. Hate to see it.
Unless you want to go to the Great North.
If you were to, if that situation were handed to you, and you could have one bite of the king of all meats, where would you go first? You can saw off one bite, and then they're taking it.
I'd probably take mine.
No. In terms of the king of all meats is on the plate.
Oh,
they hand it in front of you. The piece.
I thought you were saying where are you going to get?
No. If you were. Where are you cutting out of?
So I'm going to do a very surgical, and listen, they didn't specify the size of the bite.
No.
I'm capable of a great bite.
I've seen it. Witness. You can't take like a majority. Like it's still going to be.
I'm going to take a bite.
At most a tenth of the piece of meat.
I'm going to artfully carve so that I get some cap, but also some center. And if you said you are not allowed to cross there's a border there that can't be crossed, I'll go all cap.
Yeah. The cap's where where it's at. It's unreal.
It's a flavor bomb.
It really is. It's an absolute real treat. So, and in addition to that, we've got the smartest man in the building with us today at 1:15.
Yeah.
Mr. DePodesta will join the program.
He will be joining the program. So we've got Depot, we've got Kwesi, we got Benjamin Solak, who wrote the awesome
article. Is he
on
here too?
He's on here too. It's just loaded up.
He's at 1:40? How are we going to hit all these breaks, Gibby? There's no way I can hit all these breaks.
Yeah, you can.
I mean, there's just no chance.
Head honcho.
So many things to discuss. I
So
haven't even made an over-under.
I had a call Solak this morning, and I was like, we're supposed to have you at 1:30. Any way I can move you back a few minutes?
Yeah.
Paul DePodesta's coming on.
Yeah.
And he was like, happy to move back when Paul DePodesta is coming on.
That's right. That's right. That's good.
He's a pro's pro.
Yeah. So he's the one. Z, you tweeted this out, didn't you? He was the one that wrote like the breakdown of Kyle and McVay and
that's what
all
we
of that.
On the
we talked a little bit about that yesterday, but it's a great piece. And you mentioned how Joe responded to it, which was fun. So read that if you'd like. Where is your head right now on a Friday a little after 1 in respect to these two championship games this weekend?
I'm excited. I mean, my head first place that I'm at is total excitement for this Sunday. I think it's going to be tremendous. I feel like, one of the things that I've been saying is that if you were to take a look at like the stakes for each of these four teams, the stakes for the Rams are greater than the stakes for the other three teams combined.
Good job, Eddie. Yeah.
And so there, and I think if you zero down even further in that, Sean McVay has more at stake in this football game than any combination of other people involved in the game Sunday combined. Yeah, I was trying to think if there, and again, you hate being prisoner of the moment, but it does feel like more than in most years that I remember, where it's all on them. They're playing at their place. They made this trade for this game. They're 0 of their last 6 against San Francisco. Kyle is in here with a quarterback who he drafted the replacement for crying out loud. He is in this game there. He had to win his last game of the year just to get into the postseason at their place.
Go
90 yards.
Yeah.
Jimmy Grapes.
there's, I think, a kind of a casual understanding or maybe belief that even if Garoppolo wins the next 2 games, they may move off of it, which is crazy, but they may. Who knows? Garoppolo's been in the center of stuff in terms of people analyzing what he is, what he isn't. Kyle talked this week about how great he was. Man, they're just living the dream. They are living the dream.
He's a
if you're
winner.
San Francisco. There's no question he's a winner. There's no question he's a winner. That's proven. I mean, what's the record? Like 36-12 or something like that in San Francisco.
It's pretty
starter.
darn good.
It's really good. So yes. So from that perspective, in the AFC, if you're Kansas City, sure, if you win another Super Bowl, then okay, now you can start talking dynasty. You can talk about all of that. But they're in the AFC Championship game again. They did not get off to a great start. They've been great the last half of the season in the postseason. For Cincinnati, you're a year ahead of schedule. I mean, it's all gravy. Now, they won't approach it that way. We're 2 guys on the radio. They'll approach it, and I know they'll have the right approach with Joe Burrow. They'll have the right approach of we are here to win now. Like, they changed the narrative. For a while in the postseason, it was like, why not us? And Burrow got in front of the team last week before they played Tennessee and say, blank that.
That's what
we're
supposed
good.
to do.
This is what we're supposed to be.
Yeah.
And he changed that narrative around him, and then he's so dang good that everyone follows. So all the rest of those teams are all in great shape no matter what. The Rams don't have a first-round pick until 2025, which, by the way, I'll ask Paul about that in terms of their strategy of, look, we don't need first-round picks. We're going to make trades. We want established guys. They're going to play. They haven't had one in what, since 16 or 17? They haven't had a number 1 with the Rams.
They don't care. Yeah.
They don't care.
They don't care.
They don't care. And by the way, it's worked. They played for a Super Bowl. They're on the cusp of playing in a second one. They've won the division. They've been in the postseason. Like, it's worked. You got to give them credit. It has worked. But it's all on them. It's all on them to do it. They have to. It's the NFC Championship game in the Super Bowl in their stadium. It's all on them.
It is, and they had a chance to keep these 49ers, their nemesis, out of the playoffs in their stadium. They did not.
Did you watch that game?
Which one?
The 49ers-Rams game?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, I had basketball, so I missed it. I did not see.
Oh, my God.
I know. So I had it up until 17-0 or whatever, and then we had to go to a game.
Yes, 17-0.
So, and then I thought, well, it's over.
Because we played at 1 that day.
Right.
So I was able to get home, and I was able to watch pretty much, I think, the entire second half.
Okay, so I saw the first half.
Not great. It's a debacle. Oh
my gosh.
Oh, boy. 1 layer, 2 layers, 3 layers.
A V-neck. Look, he's got a
V-neck
and a button down.
Yeah, and then he's got the.
And a
boy. Just come on.
He's got a vest.
He's got a vest.
He's got a V-neck, a button down, a vest.
4 layers.
And a jacket.
Yeah.
The layers for him, they've got to be as thin as silk because they don't
must.
bulk.
No bulk.
Anytime I try to get into something like that, I'm like, boy, I'd love to dress like Senior Swag once. And I start layering things. I look like Ralphie in A Christmas Story.
Big B Beau.
Going out.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just.
I can't get up. You look
right.
Like the brother
that's what it's
Randy.
like. The
yeah,
Randy. Yeah, Randy. Poor Randy. Yeah. I mean, that's it. I don't know. I don't know how he does it. But he pulls it off somehow.
He can't push his arms
put him
down.
up. Yeah. Can't
Keep
do
going
it.
up.
He's going to be warm.
Oh, man.
So I missed the second half of
so
that
I
game.
watched the second half.
Yeah.
Obviously, immense pressure. For the record, just so you know, 33-14 in the regular season. Garoppolo with the Niners 4-1 in the playoffs. So that puts me at 37-15.
That's a lot of winning. What did I have it? Like 36-13? So it's close. I'm in the
You're
vicinity.
right. Of course you were.
That's my life.
Yeah.
Not
You're
perfect, but
tremendous.
close.
So in that one, Garoppolo throws for 316 yards, 71% of his passes are completed. He leads them down for the touchdown drive, and he had thrown an interception down in the red zone earlier in the game. So this was a huge drive and gets him in. And, boy, it's just his games aren't always pretty. There's no doubt. But when he needs to make the drive to get them to win the game or to get the field goal or to get the touchdown, as he did in Cincinnati. In the game against Cincinnati, he throws for 296, 2 touchdowns, quarterback rating of 103. Against Atlanta the following week, 18-23, quarterback rating of 123. He's going to have to, I think, be clean in this one. I think you're going to want to see cleanliness, but you'd say, well, he threw 2 picks last time, and they beat him. In the first meeting, he goes 15 of 19 for 182, 2 touchdowns against the Rams. They beat him 31-10. I didn't even remember that game.
I don't remember that game.
31-10, week 10. But, yeah, I got to get home and watch it. You can't help but love these Niners. I'm on a 3rd and 7 in a critical juncture. They're running tosses to Deebo Samuel, and he's picking it up.
Right.
And they did that against Dallas, too.
Yep.
They got a bad spot there, which led to the unbelievable fourth down debacle and the almost, oh, goodness, the craziness that was going to happen there. But the Niners are a great story. You think about the fact that they've now been in the NFC title game 2 of the last 3 years. They win this one, they'll go to Super Bowl 2 of the last 3 years. And the one that they didn't go is when Garoppolo was hurt. I mean, that's what's wild about it. I don't think people realize not only was Garoppolo hurt, he only played 7 games that year. The rest of the team was hurt. You know, everybody
ravaged.
They were ravaged
yes,
by
they
injury.
were the most injured team in the NFL 2 years ago.
And yet,
or last year.
Oh, I'm sorry. He only played. Let's see. Hold on. Regular season 2000. I think it was on Debo. 6 games. 6 games a year ago. They're fun, and there's so much pressure on this. Everything was mortgaged. Everything
no
was
doubt.
mortgaged.
Yeah.
And they got lucky that the Odell situation didn't cost them anything.
Yeah.
It fell in their lap. But Von Miller and Stafford, there's so much pressure on them. By the way, did you see that this is going to be the most expensive they're saying the tickets, most expensive non-Super Bowl ever by a wide margin, and that parking lots around SoFi are charging $500.
Jeez.
$500
to park
a car.
I also saw that upwards of 48% of the tickets were being bought from Northern California. You got to remember, too, though, and I know you know this growing up, maybe not growing up where you did in Montana, but having grown up in Northern California.
Sure.
It's not just Rams, Niners. You think about Dodgers, Giants, there is vitriol back and forth here from a long, long time between these two cities. So there's a lot of that that's going to be in play in this one. We'll get you set for all of this. We do the over-unders. We do the scores, luminaries everywhere, including coming up next, our Chief Strategy Officer, Paul DePodesta, will join the program coming up next. You'll listen to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. When you're on the injured list, get a little help getting back in the game. Call our friends at Elk Ohio, 1-800-ELK-OHIO for a free case review. Elk & Elk's a proud partner of your Cleveland Browns, and now it's time for us all to get a little bit smarter with our Chief Strategy Officer, Paul DePodesta, joining us on the hotline. Paul, thank you so much for taking the time. Let's just start, I guess. It's been a couple of weeks since the season's been over, and we're on the cusp of the championship games in the AFC, NFC. Certainly a place that we thought that we would be in the mix for this year. For myriad reasons, that didn't happen. As you look back and do your work on everything that happened this season and everything that didn't, what are some things that come to mind that prevented this team from being here this year?
Well, it's been a frustrating couple of weeks as far as that's concerned. On the other hand, I'd say all of our work in the last couple of weeks diving into some of these things has also been exciting because there are definitely some clear things we need to correct and that we feel like we can, going into next year. Look, offensively as a whole, we just didn't get it done to the same level we got it done a year ago. I think in 2020 we were a top 5 offense in football. We returned basically the entire offensive team, and unfortunately just weren't able to replicate the same level of success. And part of it was we certainly dealt with some key injuries to some key folks along the way, like every team does. But I think they were even more severe on us in 2021 than they were in 2020. So that was a big piece of it. I mean, our defense as a whole played extremely well. We became a top 10 unit in our eyes, this year, and they really played their tails off. So I think if ideally we want to be a top 10 unit on both sides of the ball and special teams included. And, we think that's within our grasp. We're just frustrated that we have to wait 8 months, before we get a chance to play again and hopefully prove it.
Paul, always a pleasure talking to you. And kind of to piggyback on what, you were talking about there, staying on the offensive side of the ball, I know passing efficiency is something that you like to think about and focus on, and it feels like we're entering maybe even a golden age here in the AFC specifically. When you think of Mahomes, you think of Josh Allen, you think of what Justin Herbert can bring to the table, and, of course, Joe Burrow in our division, and, these offenses and their ability to throw the football. Is this something that you guys take it at this time of year? You look back at what you did, but do you also try to dive into maybe, what some of these playoff teams are doing, how they've gotten here, how they're throwing the football, and what really feels like a league where you're going to have to be able to throw it at an elite level to do things consistently at a high level?
Oh, absolutely. No, I think you make a great point. And we don't just look at ourselves. We're constantly looking at what we would consider to be the top 10 teams, both in terms of offense, defense, but also in terms of passing offense, rushing offense, passing defense, rushing defense, and stacking ourselves up against, those different units and saying, because, hey, ultimately that's where we want to be, and that's where we think we need to be in order to be still playing at this time of year. So that is our standard. It's not that we want to be a league average team in any of those categories. We want to be above average, in all of them, and hopefully top 10 or even top 5 in as many of them as possible. So we have to pay attention. And you're right. I mean, the reality is the passing efficiency numbers in the league generally are on the upswing. I mean, they have been for the last 10, 15, 20 years. I mean, teams are just getting better and better at throwing the ball. They're getting more and more explosive. And, we have to think about that both from a personnel perspective and a scheme perspective. And we need to think about it on both offense and defense. It's not just how do we create that on offense, but how do we stop it, on defense. So, no, we absolutely have to not only keep up with those other teams, but we also need to think about how maybe we can get out in front of them in some cases.
Paul, you said the word explosive, and that jumped to mind because it's not just pass efficiency or even an ability to do it at a high level from a yardage accumulation. It's explosiveness. We've seen that in the postseason of, and you name all the guys, whether it's Kupp getting deep or what Tyreek Hill did or Jamar Chase in the draft for the Bengals. In terms of defending every blade of grass, from an offensive standpoint, does this roster have what is needed to create that and to make it difficult defensively? And how important will that be this offseason maybe to try to create it?
Sure. No, I think it's a big part of it. I mean, look, you'd love to have the one superstar that you can count on and just say, you know what, we're just going to let him go win. and there's nothing the defense can do. He's just too good. Those guys are pretty rare, right? And they're not readily available, even if they do exist. So what we really try to do more than anything is put defenses in a bind. It's like, who are you gonna choose to cover here? Who are you gonna choose to double? Just because we have so many different viable weapons that we can turn to, we want to, Kevin has said this often, but we want to be able to have an offense that's flexible, on any given week and against any given defense. And again, in 2020, I think we were able to execute that at a very high level, and unfortunately not as high a level in 2021. But I think we're still confident, certainly in that mindset, and even in our personnel going forward. When we're healthy last year, you could sit there and say, okay, it's we're in the red zone, it's 2nd and 5. Pick your poison. Who are you going to try to key on? Are you going to try to stop Nick Chubb? Are you going to try to stop Kareem? Jarvis Landry, Hoop, or David Njoku? I mean, there are lots of different targets that we could go to in those situations, and I think that's probably the way we're going to continue to build it out. But we'd also we'll always keep our eyes open for that, for that one superstar
Sure.
who can do it all by himself.
Yeah, and I think that's probably an interesting or fascinating thing to study, right? The way that it affects an offense's productivity or a defense's ability to defend and how they defend an offense when you have, that one guy. And if you were to look at the teams that are here, you would say Tyreek Hill certainly stands out as that guy in Kansas City, although Travis Kelce, I think, maybe the best pass-catching tight end, and they work in concert so well. What Debo's bringing to the Niners, Cooper Kupp, obviously, with the Rams, and then Jamar Chase with the Bengals, that, it does feel like there is something about having that elite guy to open things up for getting the passing game going. Now, you've said that sounds like that's one of the priorities. However, you get there to get this passing game, though, to be elite this offseason. You mentioned the other side, stopping passing games. And the Browns' 5th-ranked pass defense this year. But you just look at the D-line, Paul, and I know you guys were prepared for this, but you take, 3 of your top 4 defensive ends from a year ago, not counting Miles, all unrestricted free agents. You look at the defensive tackle room. You have a starter who's an unrestricted free agent, a starter who's an exclusive rights free agent, but it's dealing with an off-field issue right now. And then Sheldon Day, another veteran there, also an unrestricted free agent. So how important is it to keep that portion of what you did so well on defense either together or to reinforce it to keep it at the level it was in 2021?
Sure. So I'll actually comment on both those things. I'll start with the defensive piece, though. Look, it's a marriage of rush and coverage,
Yep.
right? And I think for us to be, what you said, we were 5th in passing defense this year. Both of those units have to play really at a high level and in a coordinated way, right? I mean, if you're running a particular rush, you have to have the right coverage on, and guys have to play it, correctly. If you expect the ball to come out at a certain time, your coverage needs to reflect that. The good news is almost our entire coverage unit's returning.
Yep.
Right. We have 5 corners, top 5 corners are all coming back. We have not all of our safeties, but at least a few of our safeties coming back. Feel really, really good about that whole unit overall.
Yeah.
On the rush piece of it, the good news is we have Miles,
Yep.
who's arguably the defensive player of the year. That's a great place to start. We do feel really good about 2 of our young defensive tackles, Jordan Elliott and Tommy Togiai,
Yep.
guys we've drafted in the last couple of years. And then you're right, we have a bunch of free agents out on the edge and even in the interior. So we'll have some work to do. I mean, hopefully we'll be able to bring some of those guys back, and then maybe there will be a couple of new faces. But at least as we sit here in the end of January, I think we're in better shape than we were, a year ago or even a year before that in terms of all the returning guys, in key spots. Denzel and Greedy and Greg Newsome and Troy Hill. I mean, all those guys coming back on top of Miles, I think puts us in a good spot. And on offense, and we were talking about that elite guy, but it's interesting, even the teams that you mentioned with their elite guys, they all have pretty good help too. I mean, Jamar Chase certainly awesome, but Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins, really good players, in their own right. Cooper Kupp, tremendous year, but obviously Odell, Van Jefferson, they had Robert Woods, for half the year before that. Tyreek, you mentioned Travis Kelce, McCole Hardman's had some really big games. Pringle's had a big year.
Yeah.
I mean, the reality is that these are pretty deep units, and there may be one or two guys who sort of rise to that level of superstardom, but the reality is they have a lot of contributors, which creates opportunities too for those superstars. You can't just key in on those guys. You can't go into one of those games saying we're going to stop this one guy, because there are just too many weapons that they can burn you with.
Yeah, that's, I think, part of the fun part of the roster construction is trying to get that here with the Cleveland Browns, and I know you guys are going to be working tirelessly to do so. I want to ask you about one thing that, it feels like you couldn't help but notice watching the games this weekend, right? Robbie Gould, game-winning field goal as time expires. Evan McPherson, game-winning field goal as time expires. Gay, game-winning field goal as time expires. Butker, field goal to tie the game as the game expired to give Kansas City the opportunity to go win that game in overtime. It feels, and I guess this is anecdotally, which is why I'm talking to you, because I know that you will have things that are not anecdotal. It feels like kicking and kicking efficiency is more important than ever. The Raiders don't make the playoffs without Carlson. I believe that firmly, just with the number of big kicks that he made for that team this year. Is that something you guys are diving into, and is that a position? And it seems hard. Like, Carlson started with Minnesota, and then he ends up in Vegas. Folk's been all around the league. Gould's been around the league. But to find a guy – how important of a priority is it to find that guy that can deliver high-level kicking for this organization for a long time?
Sure. Well, I actually think you laid it out pretty well. The reality is that these guys tend to bounce around, and sometimes it's just because it takes them a handful of years to get their sort of sea legs, at the NFL level, to the point where they're highly, highly efficient. In other situations, it's just because, the sample sizes in a given year are pretty small. So the swings in performance can be pretty large, and as a result, it might look like a guy just had a terrible year, but in reality, he's just, the same kicker and comes back the next year for somebody else and kicks extraordinarily well. Look, there's no doubt that it's important. As we saw this, like you said, as we saw this past weekend, missing a kick is painful.
Yeah.
Right?
We have them.
No one wants to kick field goals. You typically, it's not, you don't win a lot of games kicking field goals. You might win games kicking field goals at the end of the game,
sure.
But you don't necessarily win at kicking field goals throughout the game. But whenever you miss a field goal, look, it's essentially a turnover. I mean, the way to think about it, at least the way we think about it, is it's an 8-yard sack on fourth down. That's really what it is, and that's a huge play in a game. So unfortunately, when you go to kick a field goal, the outcome is sort of asymmetric to the downside, right? Missing it is way worse than making it is good for your team.
Yeah.
So no, you definitely, it's important to have a guy that you believe in that is efficient. But again, unfortunately, there's just not a ton of consistency year to year, across the league from some of these guys. It's a hard job. Again, small samples, and then lots of other factors in play, whether it's the snap, the hold, the weather, all sorts of different things that come into whether or not they're able to execute in that one moment they're called upon. But certainly we fully recognize, I think everybody in the NFL after last weekend, recognizes the importance of having one that you can count on, and, kudos to all four of those guys for coming through when it mattered the most for their teams.
Well, Paul, I think I can speak for the organization. I did yesterday in saying we're taking a kicker at 13 overall, so you don't have to even worry about it.
Yeah,
like
where does that rank?
That's where we're at. I mean, I made it. I mean, no, in all seriousness, we had a little fun yesterday, but in all seriousness, you do. You were talking about how deflating it is to miss a kick, and I love how aggressive play calling has evolved on fourth down in this league. and we're seeing things that you never would have seen. I think sometimes even the guys on the broadcast can't believe it because we've been programmed 4th and anything, you punt it. I mean, even at midfield in the old days, 4th and 1, you always punt it. Now you see the go for it, go for it, go for it. Even in the red zone, you see more and more teams going for it. I know we like to do that a lot. But how do you measure how deflating it is? Because you mentioned that it's like an 8-yard sack, like a turnover when you miss a field goal. How do you measure that in terms of missing it on 4th down versus attempting the field goal? Is there a way to put that into perspective from your vantage point?
Yeah, we do try to do that. And we think there are, there's an advantage to be gained in the decision, whether it's to kick or not to kick, before you then execute the play, and hopefully you whatever you choose, you do so successfully, or you execute it successfully. But yeah, no, we think there's definitely an advantage to either be had or lost just by the decision, that you make. Now, oftentimes that just gets conflated with the outcome, right? It's like, oh, well, you missed the kick, or you missed the 4th down, you shouldn't have gone for it. And we really do try to separate those two, and try to make the optimal decision, and then obviously try to, execute on it. The reality is, I don't even think it's so much the analytics. I mean, people are, now sort of constantly talking about the analytics on 4th down, and sometimes even decrying the analytics, like, oh, that's what the analytics say is to go for it here. I think it's just the recognition from a lot of teams that the margins are so skinny in our league.
You're right.
I mean, they're just so skinny. I mean, the edge between winning and losing is just razor thin. And teams, I think, have started to take the mindset of like, I'm going to try to win. I'm not going to try to avoid losing. Mm-hmm. And I think for a long time, people were trying to avoid losing, which makes sense. I mean, they're just sort of were loss averse in general, and I think that was the typical mindset going in. I don't want to be responsible for us losing this game by being overly aggressive. But now I think the mindset has begun to shift in the league in general, and people have said, you know what, we're going to go try to win this thing, as opposed to avoid losing it. And as teams now have had some success in doing so, I think it's just emboldened the other teams because they're saying, geez, if our opponents are going to do this, we have to be prepared to do it also. And look, there's a time and a place for it. I mean, not every 4th down is certainly is created equal. Even every 4th and 2 from the 30 with a minute left, not all those are created equal. I mean, there are a lot of other factors that come into play in every one of those decisions. But I do think overall, the league is becoming, just much more aggressive in their quest to win some of these tight games.
I have a question for you, Paul, based on kind of what you were talking about, because I think it is that process versus outcome. I mean, it's akin to going to, Vegas and sitting down at a blackjack table and you have, an 11 against a dealer showing a 6, you double down and you lose. It was still the right decision. The odds were tilted in your favor to make that decision at that time. The outcome, those are separate things. So could you kind of walk us through, because you mentioned so many factors go into, let's call it a 4th and 2 from the 30. Just kind of some of the things are the inputs that maybe go into that and how that's communicated in real time to our coaching staff and then the ultimate decision maker, Kevin Stefanski.
Well, those types of situations, I would tell you, are contemplated throughout the week so that by the time Sunday comes around and we're in the moment and you don't have time for, thorough discussion, we already know what we're going to do. So, and there's a meeting on Friday morning with Kevin and some of the other folks on our coaching staff and research staff that sit down and kind of hash out the plan for that week and all get on the same page so they're very comfortable with it. Now, even that plan can change to some degree as the game is unfolding, right? So, but some of the things we'll be considering is, basic stuff. Are we the home team or are we the away team? How do we think we match up, both offensively and defensively? How good do we feel about our plans? All those sorts of things will go into dictating how aggressive we want to be as the game starts. Then on game day, we'll review it again because things like weather, current injuries, all that sort of stuff matters. And then as the game is going on, it's really the coaches feel about how we're playing. right? And how's our defense playing? How's our offense playing? Do we think we're going to have another shot at getting the ball back? And if we do, what kind of confidence level do we have that we're going to come down and score? So all those things are sort of happening, but we start in real time. But we start in a very sort of grounded foundation as of Friday morning that, hey, based on the circumstances we expect in this particular game, this is going to be our level of aggression in these different situations. And then we start to adjust off of that, after kickoff on Sunday.
Paul, thank you so much for the time. We appreciate it a great deal, man.
No, happy to do it.
All right, that's Paul DePodesta.
Enjoy the sun,
Chief
by the
strategy
way.
Of course he is.
You're not missing any great weather, Paul. I can promise you that.
He bailed.
He's out.
He's
like,
on the surf.
I'm on the beach.
I don't need any more talking with you two dopes and your 2 feet of snow. It's 72 and sunny here. That's where
right.
that is.
That's where he is.
That's how he's going to do things. Ben
Smart.
Zolak, I believe, is going to join us coming up next. You're listening to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. The weather is cold outside. Would a nice hot bath or shower feel amazing? Why not transform that area with a custom bath that's going to feel like a spa? Let the Bath Authority make this a reality. Get it to you at a fraction of the cost of the competitors, and many times they can do it in a single day. The Bath Authority is Cleveland's premier bath and shower remodeler, expert factory-trained installers. Call now. You get $500 off your next custom bath or shower remodel. Call 216-220-8399 or go to thebathauthority.com. It's where affordability meets quality. Largest selection of bath projects, all made in the United States. Change your bathroom from outdated to outstanding. They will take care of you. Senior Products, expert installers. Thebathauthority.com, 216-220-8399. Well, it is not often that someone writes something that gets the Hoff thinking the way that this next man did. And by the Hoff, of course, we're referring to Joe Thomas,
yes,
known here on the program. Not sure if Ben knew that or not, as we refer to him only as the Hoff. Speaking of Joe Thomas, he joins us now. Ben Solak, staff writer for The Ringer. Speaking of the piece that you did on San Francisco and the Rams and the matchup on the coaching side between McVay and Kyle, obviously Joe knows Kyle quite a bit. We know him quite a bit from the time he was Receivers offensive coordinator. What was the inspiration to write the story? Were you surprised at your findings?
Inspiration-wise, it's funny. I feel like the Shanahan-McVay offense piece has been written 10,000 different times because it is the preeminent offense, right? As Cleveland will very well know, right? It came through in 2014, and then another iteration of it came in a few years later with Kevin Stefanski, right? It's kind of been pushing all around the league. We usually just talk about it, though, like they're all kind of one and the same. And really over the last several years, but especially this past year with the Rams adding Matt Stafford, replacing Jared Goff, their starting quarterback, now these trees have diverged enough, right? The branches have gotten far enough away from each other that we have to start talking about them as their different offenses and talking about the factors, the myriad of factors that have affected those evolutions. Because that's what coaching is, right? It's saying, this is my system, and then, believing in that, coaching that, installing that, and then getting week one NFL season, everything hits the wall, and you got to go and you kind of got to recalibrate and figure out how to change things and evolve. And so it just felt like with how connected those two coaches were in 2017, and now with them 5 years later being here in the NFC Championship game, it felt appropriate to take a look and to write about what has changed in their offenses. You don't really discover anything there. You're kind of just telling the history of what's kind of been going on for the last 5 years and how these two guys started from the same place, have faced similar problems, but have evolved in different ways. That's what's cool about the NFL.
It is cool, and I like that. Joe certainly enjoyed the article. You're like, oh, you're Joe Thomas when he retweeted, which I thought I got a big chuckle out of.
Yeah, Joe's like, oh, I enjoyed this piece. I was like, I enjoyed watching you play football for 15 years. I don't know what to say back to that, man.
Well, it's good. I mean, we and Beau and I and the Hoff had a lot of text messages and discussion about this article that spurred it on. And obviously, Joe is a huge, huge believer in and supporter of Kyle Shanahan, and thought he was the best guy that he worked with. Certainly in his time in the NFL, he had 9 different offenses, which is hard to believe when you say that out loud. But when you look at Kyle and you look at Sean, what you said going into this, you were just more chronicling the differences. Were you? In terms of discovery, was the fact that, Goff's 17 and 18 seasons ended with the same EPA as Stafford this year, was that a discovery that you made, or is that something that you had anticipated, those second half swoons and going into this article? Because to me, that was the most fascinating part of it from the McVay standpoint.
Yeah, no, the tailing off of the McVay offense in the back half of the season under Stafford was really an interesting thing to see. Because we've talked about it in previous years about how, McVay has to keep this offense simple, and so they kind of do what they do, and they make changes in the offseason, but then eventually defenses catch up, and there's nothing more they can do with Jared Goff's quarterback. Has to keep it simple. Goff's a limited quarterback. Then he gets Stafford, and turns out the exact same thing happens, right? We get to kind of the halfway pole of the season, and the offense starts to fall off in terms of efficacy, and it gives you a reminder that a coach's strength can be his weakness, because you can get television, you can get blinders put on and say, this is what we're good at. McVay loves to. I like to compare him to like a gamer, right? Like you figure out the buttons that work and then you just spam them, you just mash them. You know what I mean? If this is it, then we're just gonna hit it. And all of a sudden, defenses are doing work too, and they started to figure out tendency, and they know, all right, 3rd and 6, and they got Cooper Kupp lined up behind Tyler Higbee. We usually know what comes out of this, and we're gonna custom rig. We're gonna call it a Taylor coverage to make sure we take away this concept. And if they beat us with something else, sure, but this is what they usually run, and those tendencies are very clear to other teams, and that is stuck even with the Matt Stafford era. So that's where I think the biggest difference is between McVay and Shanahan. And there's a lot of little differences, but the one that really stood out, like you said, the one that catches your eye is the fact that Shanahan's offenses tend to get better later in the season, especially when he's been able to keep the same quarterback healthy and they don't have to make a change. And McVay's offenses tend to get worse. And I think that's because it's so important to know your own tendencies on offense. It's important to look 2 moves ahead on the chessboard and say, okay, if they think we're going to do X, they're going to give us Y. How do we look like we're going to do X, but instead we run Z? And that way we make sure we can beat Y. You know, you have to kind of have that mental game in your head, and that seems to be something Shanahan's really strong at that McVay's still learning.
Ben, you think about the pressure that's on McVay in this one, and I think it's on more than all the rest of the teams and coaches combined. That's on his shoulders. We remember, him in the Super Bowl, and it felt like he outthought himself when playing the Patriots in that game. Kyle's gotten him the last 6 times. It feels like that could get in his head a little bit. Based on all of the things that you've seen, what can McVay do to counter that? How can he get on the upper hand of this thing on Sunday?
Throw the ball, never stop. This is why you brought him in.
Did we lose Ben?
Oh, sorry about that. I think I muted myself with my face.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead. You went as far as throw the ball and never stop, and then we lost you. Go ahead.
We liked it. That was it. It was his walk-off. He's like, that's it.
My whole answer. No more explanation. Yeah. So throw the ball and never stop. This is why you traded Stafford and Goff, right? This is why you were getting here with Goff. You were getting to the wild card round, the divisional round. In order to get past those landmarks, you brought in a quarterback who can create outside of structure, quarterback who can access different areas of the field, can throw late down the middle, can throw into a tight window, can throw outside of the numbers. You widen the field. Now you have a Niners defense that is the best run defense right now in the league. They have not given up over 60 yards to a rusher since week 8, and that was when Travis Homer had like a 73-yard big punt run. Like, this has been a lockdown defense. Sean McVay loves in games where he has a lead, like he did in week 18 against the Niners, or in games that are late in the season, as he's done the past couple weeks, to run the football. Because he wants to have a balanced approach. He wants to be able to run the ball the way a Shanahan team can. But he can't. He doesn't have the same personnel. He doesn't have the same blockers. And also, he now has a Ferrari, a quarterback. You have to throw the Niners out of this game. Because if the Niners stay even remotely close, they were down 3 possessions in the third quarter against the Rams, and they were still running the football because that's what they want to be on offense. And they know if they can get that running game working, then they can put together long scoring drives and access their play action game. You have to throw them out of that. You have to put them in such a hole that you are forcing Jimmy Garoppolo to claw his way back into a game. You got to think, what's Kyle Shanahan's nightmare? And Shanahan's nightmare is 1st and 10 drop back pass with Jimmy. That's the last thing that Shanahan wants to do. You have to throw him into that position. I would be throwing on early downs. I would be throwing down the field. I'd be challenging the outside corners of the Niners to make tackles, make plays on the ball against the sideline. I'd be heavily targeting Odell Beckham Jr. when you get him one-on-one on the sideline. You got to throw the Niners into a position where they're playing in catch-up. That's not how that team is built to play.
No, and the good news for the Niners, if there's one team that they did it against, it was the Rams in that game. They had to get into the playoffs. You talk about evolution, and I don't think there's anything more stark this season than the fact that through week number 9, Deebo Samuel had a grand total of 6 carries this year. He would go on to finish the regular season with 59 carries beginning in week 10. That's when they made that change. To see a change like that on film as you broke it down and what they were able to do with Juszczyk and with Kittle and even now Trent Williams running some power and pulling across from his tackle spot, how does that compare to anybody else in the league, and what just a kind of miraculous change they decided to make incorporating Deebo that way?
Yeah, I don't think they'll ever admit it. You kind of read between the lines of what Shanahan says and what Mike McDaniel, their running game coordinator, says. I think they kind of fell backwards into it a little bit. Like, I think they were like, this is cool. And there have been games in the past against the Patriots last year, against the Rams last year, the first game they played, where they gave Deebo some handoffs. They put him in the backfield and they incorporated him. But I don't think they knew how much of the playbook he'd be able to handle, how many of the reads, right, the vision, the eyes, understanding the blocking scheme he'd be able to handle. And then they got to that Week 10 game against the Rams. They've been so beat up at the running back position. And really what they needed was a solution to teams putting a ton of guys on the line of scrimmage, over the tight end, over the tackle, because they were removing their ability to get double teams on outside zone, right?
Yep.
They wanted to run outside zone. They want to get all the way outside of you, and they need double teams to do that. So teams are putting just like a dude over the tight end, a dude over the tackle, a dude over another tight end, like just as many bodies as they could at that point of attack to take away the double teams. So the Niners said, we got to put two guys in our backfield, have somebody lead block on this, and hand the ball off to somebody else. And they like to do that with Juszczyk and with their running back. But they also realize they can do that out of split back gun. Running back leads, and then they hand it to Debo. He's coming across the formation, and he motions in, and that seems to work well for them. So then they started to put Debo in the backfield alone, just to kind of see if he could work it too, and he did that. And then they started to run him on split zone, and power, and things that he has never looked at in his life in terms of the film we've seen from him. And he's doing that too. And they're like, all right, we're just not going to stop this. And we'll see if anybody that we face can stop this. And nobody could.
No.
It was a fun discovery for them in the second half of the season. So he was supposed to be a solution to a specific problem and was just so good at handling the ball that they just widened his role as much as they wanted to. And it never became too much for him. And now they have a nightmare of a personnel package where they can walk out with, what we would call 11 personnel, right? One running back, that's Juszczyk, one tight end, that's Kittle, and then three receivers. But they may not actually be three receivers, so they can just put Debo in the backfield and run it. And that's really, really hard as a defense to decide what personnel you want to match that with, what calls you want to match that with, because they can go spread on one play, and they can go heavy personnel and run on the very next play with no huddle. That's a nightmare to deal with.
Ben, you've done all the research. They play on Sunday. How do you see it going?
I mean, it's funny that, picking the Niners, who have beaten McVay the last 6 times, feels like it's going out on a limb. But I do think the Niners win it. I think that this running game matches up well against the Rams' run defense. I think this passing game matches up well with the Rams' pass defense. In the 2 games they've played, Jimmy is 30 for 36 throwing between the Niners, where this offense wants to get its targets, right? Hit Ayuk in motion, hit Kittle in motion, hit Debo in motion, and then let those guys create after the catch, right? And so the matchup makes a lot of sense. Jimmy hasn't played well in the playoffs, but this is warmer weather. He's another week removed from the thumb injury, another week removed from the shoulder injury. I think we get a better day from him than we got against Green Bay or against Dallas. I think they're able to win it. And if the Rams do, it'll be on the back of Stafford. It'll really justify that trade acquisition. But in terms of 22 players, I think the Niners are better suited for the win.
Ben, thanks for your time, man.
Yes.
Thanks for the piece. It was really illuminating this week.
Of course, fellas. I appreciate you guys. You be well.
All right, that's Ben Solak, staff writer for The Ringer, who wrote that story. One of the things, you're talking about the rushing. I was talking with Laurinaitis, who played behind Aaron Donald for several years, obviously, in L.A., and brought up a game they played against Washington when Kyle was there. And he said, look, no one's going to argue that Aaron Donald's the best player in football. No one would argue it. But one of the things that happens is he is so good at getting upfield that Kyle would just run behind him. And he said it puts so much pressure on you as a linebacker because Aaron will be lined up in a 3 technique, and all of a sudden they're running right behind it, and there's nobody there to stop a back. And he said that's something that is a headache when you play Kyle Shanahan and you have Aaron Donald on the defensive side of things.
It's an interesting thing, and again, it's Kyle thinking next level. And one of the other things that jumped out to me, and I'm bummed that I forgot to ask Ben about this, but they have in this article the heat maps of where the ball goes from the quarterback.
Yeah.
And how Kyle has been able to maintain his ability to target and operate in the middle of the field, whereas Sean McVay basically lost that ability completely. Could not get the ball to the middle of the field throwing the football. And so, again, it's just another thing where his ability to kind of make those adjustments, in game and in season over the course of a season to maintain what he wants to do well is crazy. I mean, you can't do it because you could just throw it to guys who are uncovered. But the reality is if you look at their heat map, if you just stood your whole defense in between the numbers, you're going to stop the Niners offense. Obviously, that doesn't work in real life because they can just throw it out to an uncovered guy. But that's what's so crazy about it, and people know it's happening, and he still does it. He's able to scheme it up anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if he pulls this off, it's affirmation of even, that genius stuff. He's dead already, but it's crazy getting here. But if he was to pull this off again and to do this again, to go to Dallas, to go to Green Bay, to go to the Rams, to get to another Super Bowl, pretty wild. Rumpke Waste Recycling, family-owned, operated. Whether you join them as a customer or as an employee, you'll become part of the family. Visit rumpke.com to learn more. Lots happened in that first hour. Second hour, going to be a lot the same. Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah will join us in this hour. We got over-unders. We've got the scores. You listen to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. Beau here for my friends at EOX Vantage. EOX Vantage connects core systems that don't talk. From reporting and analytics to insight and decision-making, gain a more real-time, complete picture of your business. You can eliminate those Excel nightmares that I know many of you have. You can get rid of them from your business processes. You can visualize your important data in one place, gain real-time insight to make data-driven decisions on performance through role-based visualization dashboards. With EOX Vantage, you can benefit from lower overall costs, better alignment between technology and specific business needs, scalability. It's going to allow your data to work smarter and to move your business forward. You're about growth. Your software should be too. And with EOX Vantage, your company is going to scale effortlessly. Local presence, but global footprint, trusted by some of the world's biggest brands. And a 2021 Cleveland Plain Dealer Top Workplace winner. Check them out at www.eoxvantage.com. That was an eventful first hour.
Boy, was it.
Very good stuff from Depot, and in terms of what this organization needs to check off the list. And I think it's very clear. It's something we've been – look, it's the pass game. That's got to get sorted out. We had the question on the kicker as well, but it's the explosiveness in the pass game. It's finding a way to sort those things out. It's easier said than done. Jamar Chases are hard to come by. Tyreek Hills are hard to come by. Making defenses defend every blade of grass is tough to do, but it'll be the priority of this team this offseason to do it.
If I took away from Depot, it's number one, this passing game needs to be overhauled, and you need to figure out, can we identify and then source a star like a Jamar Chase, a receiver, a game breaker on offense like that? If we can, great, we will do so. If we cannot, how do we become as dangerous as possible with a bevy of very good players? For example, I'll use a basketball analogy. If we can't get a team of if we can't get a Giannis, can we have 5 Middletons who can be dangerous and any one of them could go off and you don't know where the ball's going to go, using a Bucks example? So I think that's one of the things they're trying to do. And then what comes with that is making sure that your quarterback can do his part to ensure the explosiveness of your passing game. So I think and it's all tied together, but that's priority number one, to get this passing game on a level that can compete in a conference that is going to be flush with incredible passing attacks, incredible talent at the quarterback and wide receiver positions. Number two, I took away is that we've got to get our defensive line put together. We feel really good about where we are on the back end of our defense. We feel really good about really where we are in the rest of our roster in terms of depth and continuity. Those things, you're talking about offense, pass, everything associated with the passing game, and then defense. I think it's that line, but you got Miles to build around. You have that guy. You have the Mahomes. You have the Jamar Chase of defensive linemen in Myles Garrett. So bringing Jadeveon Clowney back, who was incredibly effective for your football team a year ago, that's going to be important. And then I think that was the most acknowledgement I've ever gotten from Depot about just, we know it's hard. Hopefully we're going to come up with something proprietarily that's going to enable us to identify it, but we have got to get a kicker that we believe in to go out there and make big kicks. Because what he said, and it was that missing kicks, missing extra points, and no team missed kicks at a higher rate than we did last year, that is more devastating than the good that is gained from making a field goal. And so getting that sorted out, I think, is a big priority as well.
Yeah, and that's your preview for the offseason. Obviously, a lot of moving parts here, but you hear what he has to say. Look, these are the smartest people. The smartest people. They see what you see. They see what we all see when you watch the AFC playoffs, and you say, my gosh, look, Jim Irsay, you can say what you want about him. He's dead right. You better have a quarterback and an offense that can get you 30 points in a game, and you got to get a defense to hold you under 30. This isn't that hard. Right? You don't have to go to an Ivy League school to come to that conclusion, and that's where you're all at. And guess what? It's only going to get more difficult. It's only going to get more difficult because guess what? Cincinnati's going to get offensive line help this offseason. They'll get it. They'll draft them. Heck, they can draft 6 offensive linemen if they want, and one of them will hit, and they'll get better there. And Kansas City's going to run it back, and Buffalo's going to run it back. And so all these teams are going to get better. The good ones are going to get better. We've got to find a way to match it. I like your analogy there when it comes to the, in a way it's the – if you can't find that Jamar Chase, and it's not like you can just go purchase one, right? You got to pick 4th or whatever, or pick 13, and maybe there's somebody like that in this draft. There might be. Put the proper scouting on it, maybe you find somebody like that. But it's kind of the Virginia basketball model. from a couple of years ago when they won the NCAA championship, where they had 3 or 4 guys who could all get you on any given time, and that's really something that has to get better. But it starts and stops, folks. Pay attention to the scores. It starts and stops with an ability to throw the ball down the field, to be dangerous offensively across the entire field, make defenses defend, and to do the opposite defensively. And that's up front. That's where it's got to get. That's where you got to get it sorted out. You got Miles, but you got to get some help. Got to get some guys there to continue to be good there. We're really good in the back end. We can really run the football. There's certain things we do really well. We have a really good roster, but those things are the priority.
The thing was, we ran the ball really well this year. We stopped the pass very effectively this year. Running the ball is it important? Absolutely. But you throw to score and then you run to finish the game off and to win. Or in the cases of some of these games, you got to be throwing it all game long. The Browns will not be what we want the Browns to be until they can throw the football effectively in obvious passing situations. They can hit explosive plays in obvious passing situations, and that they can dictate to other teams how you're going to try to defend us because of our ability to throw it. We last year dictated teams how they were going to play us because of our ability to run it, which should make it even easier to throw it. I'll tell you this. It is significantly easier to run the football when a defense is playing to stop your pass than it is to run a football when they're playing to stop your run. And conversely, while it should have been easier to throw the football under those auspices, it was not for our football team. And so we have got to get our passing game in a place where we're able to do so effectively in obvious passing situations. You even heard what he said, what Benjamin Solak said. Kyle Shanahan's nightmare is still having to drop back Jimmy Garoppolo on 1st and 10, which means that the 49ers, while he has shown the ability to come back and has done it, and he's clutch. That's the other thing. You can live with a lot of this stuff if you're clutch at the end of the games and you make that drive when you absolutely have to have it. He did it against Cincinnati. He did it against the Rams to get them through the playoffs. He did it against Dallas, and he did it against Green Bay to set up that final field goal. But that's not a team that is like the other 3 that are left. And so they have to follow not a very particular path. They've had to come back against team, but there is a script that they would be more inclined to follow to win. They're not going to be a team that's going to be 3-1 when they have a win probability under 5% in a given game. Mm-mm. So, and that's not the expectation. The expectation is you've got to be an elite passing attack. I think that is just the facts. If you want to represent this conference in the Super Bowl in the next decade, and you know that you are going to have to, more often than not, beat certainly 1, but probably 2 of Mahomes, Allen, Burrow, Herbert, maybe Deshaun Watson, maybe Aaron Rodgers if he comes here, Lamar, who is different in his own right but can still be part of a very productive offense because of what he does with his legs. That's the answer. That's what you must be. Now, we can win with our model as it is, but the fact is it makes it very difficult when you're pigeonholed into a certain style of football to win, as opposed to the ones that can play any style of football. And if you can only play one style of football in the National Football League in the year 2022, it better be throwing the ball.
Yep. Yeah, it's hard to find another roadmap for it, especially in the AFC. This from Brooke Pryor. This is the first time in a long time that this organization is going to be in this spot. Our buddy Brooke Pryor covers the Steelers for ESPN. Kevin Colbert, the general manager, is stepping down after the draft. Per Art Rooney II, team will conduct a search for a new GM immediately. Likely won't make the hire until after the draft. They've already interviewed 2 in-house candidates. Hard to imagine, Brandon Hunt, Omar Khan, hard to imagine them not being in-house if he's going to go through the draft. They must like one of those 2 guys a lot to be able to do that. But this is an end of an era in Pittsburgh. Roethlisberger, Colbert, Tomlin stays, but other than that, it's a brand new day over there, and they don't have many of those. It's rare.
It is rare that it's an organization that's thrived on stability, and they still have that, obviously, as you mentioned with Tomlin. But yeah, that's a big deal, and they're in a period of potentially a flux now. All of a sudden, if they plop, don't even want to speak it, one of these elite quarterbacks decides they want to go play, for the Steelers, then they're going to be, a handful. I mean, the fact that they made the playoffs this year is still stunning. I don't care what anybody says. We should have done it. We didn't do it. We went 0-2 against them. Losing 15-10 in the first one that still mattered. Our season was still, in play at that point at home. That wasn't a good football team. It wasn't, and they made the playoffs.
No, but what's scary about it is if you do paratroop one of those guys in there, they're right there.
Then they're scary.
They're one of those teams that's right there. They're right there with Denver because they'll get better on the offensive line too. They'll sort that out. But you put a dude in there at quarterback, and they're ready to go. I mean, I don't know people. I know we talked about it a lot, but I don't know if people in general were aware of how good Najee Harris was for the Steelers this year and all the things he did in tough spots. I mean, I don't know if there's a stat. See if your PFF has this stat. I want to know who led the league in catches and knees taken out within a half second of catching the ball. Who's that? I mean, he's got it in spades.
Yeah, I'm not.
Do you think they have that filter?
No, I don't.
Running back,
that filter.
Receivers who catch the ball and then lose their kneecaps within a second of catching it. Najee Harris led the league.
I will tell. Let's see. I can give you something that I don't know if that'll really give you what you want, but nonetheless, I thought very impressive guy there.
Yeah.
Let's see. Yards after contact per reception. That could be one where we could get him into something, right? That's kind of what you're.
I like that. I like that.
All right, among running backs who played, we'll give it like half the snaps. So starters, yards after contact. Najee was 7 yards after contact per reception. Now the leader was actually Jonathan Taylor at 10. Najee was there, but he probably did get hit. But a lot of times he doesn't get any yards after those because
he gets smoked as soon as he gets it's catch smoke.
His average depth of target was behind the line of scrimmage. That's incredible.
Yeah, well, that gets to my point as well. Then. Now I'm going to show you something on my computer that I'm going to show you, and I want you just to explain to the people what you're seeing. Okay,
he forced 35 missed tackles on receptions, which was number 1 in the NFL amongst receivers. Number 2 was 21, to just tell you how big he did that.
I believe I had that.
I believe you did. See, there's his stat for that. Is that a ninja sword?
Oh, I've seen it, and it's spectacular.
Minshew with a ninja sword on the Ponderosa?
Minshew is wearing aviators.
Yep.
Yes.
Has a middle part fluff 70s haircut.
Incredible.
A mustache.
Also divine.
Black sweatpants and a samurai sword is the way that I would describe that look.
And a rather hairy abdomen. He's a Renaissance man.
Look at this.
Yeah.
He's like Mac. He looks exactly like Mac from It's Always Sunny.
He's a character.
Yeah.
Is what he is.
He really is. I think he can play a little.
I know he can play a little.
All right. We'll get to some over-unders. We'll also have some news around the league. We get to all of that coming up next. You listen to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. Hot tub or bath that feel pretty good right now. Why not transform that area with a custom bath or shower and one that'll feel like a spa? The Bath Authority can help you do it, guys, at a fraction of the cost of competitors. And honestly, the whole process can be done in about a day. The Bath Authority is Cleveland's premier bath and shower remodel. Expert factory-trained installers. Call now, $500 off your next custom bath or shower remodel. That number is 216-220-8399, or go to thebathauthority.com. It's where affordability meets quality. They have the largest selection of bath projects, all made in the United States. A lot of tub-to-shower conversions as well on that. Superior products with expert installers. Give them a call, 216-220-8399, or go to thebathauthority.com for more on that front. Before we get to the over-unders, Josh McDaniels to Vegas, huh? That's interesting. Could that's look like that could be the way that goes. I would not have had that.
Yeah, and apparently he has turned down other opportunities. So the fact that he did this one, he has vetted it out, and they vetted him out, so that feels like it could be pretty likely. The Dolphins just now have officially requested to interview Brian Dable for a second time. Should be early next week unless he gets the Giants job per rap sheet. Josh McCown in Houston today for a second interview with the Texans to talk about their head coaching job. Sources tell me, and Mike Garafolo. McCown's told the team he's all in. Now he's the first known finalist. Okay, do you remember all these second interviews and all? I don't remember any of this.
No, I don't. It felt like it was, bring a guy and away we go. Seems like. I think like NFL Team Social, it's almost like they have to create content, and so they're just putting all of this stuff out there. I mean, it's constantly, a lot of this stuff is just out there from the own teams on their Twitter and stuff. So I don't know. I'll tell you one thing that is interesting to me. It's pretty interesting to me that Eric Bieniemy can't get a job. That's pretty interesting to me when you consider Nathaniel Hackett is getting a job, and people would say, well, the reason Bieniemy doesn't get a job because Andy Reid calls plays. Well, Peter LaFleur calls plays for Green Bay.
Sure does.
Doesn't seem to stop Nathaniel Hackett from getting a job.
Did not.
Nathaniel Hackett's dad's Paul.
Fact. Could it just be he's not a great interviewer?
Seems impossible. Like, anytime you hear him interviewed, he's really charismatic.
Yeah.
Like, he's.
But I mean,
even if he is,
doors, I don't know where.
I don't know. Even if he is a terrible interviewer at some point, wouldn't you just want somebody who is so trusted by Reid and Mahomes and all of that? You think he's hurt by the fact that, all these guys keep getting at bats and we recycle these guys, Like, if you're like Dan Quinn, we're going to run Dan Quinn back? Like, did you watch what happened in Atlanta when Kyle left? Did anybody see that?
I thought the one run back that was interesting that made sense for maybe a team like Jacksonville would be Doug Peterson. I feel like Doug Peterson was a smart offensive coach.
Yeah. And you feel like he would take care of.
You won a Super Bowl.
Yeah, you'd take care of Lawrence.
Quickly.
Very quickly, yeah. And I don't know that what you've seen from Frank Wright leads you to believe that he was the genius of the bunch.
Right.
So it sounds like they're going to have their senses and go with Leftwich is the way it seems like it's going to go in Jacksonville. But then
you would think
Adrian Wilson's going to come over as GM is what was reporting last night. They got to get Balky out of there.
Yeah, that he said it's either me or him, and I don't know. There's some kind of waffling going on in Jacksonville because that should have been done. The other head scratcher is, how does Flores not have a job yet?
I don't know. I don't get that one.
Where has that gone wrong?
I don't know. I assumed that would be Houston, but it sounds like Houston last week was going to hire Josh McCown. Remember? I don't know.
He's got a second interview. So.
Yeah. I don't know. It's really fascinating. The one guy who's not getting a sniff is Jim Harbaugh, despite him saying, please hire me. He has not gotten a sniff. He's been hands raised for a month. Hire me. Nothing. Zero. Absolutely nothing on that front. So, I don't know. Pretty interesting. Do we have time for over-unders, or do we want to take a quick? Okay. The new general manager of the Minnesota Vikings will join us next in studio. Cleveland Browns Daily, 850 ESPN Cleveland. For a running back, getting extra yards is great, but ball security always the first priority. For gamblers, keeping priorities straight also important. Make sure all your bills are paid before you spend money on fun stuff like gambling. Get more tips like this at keepitfunohio.com. Now joined by the current general manager of the Minnesota Vikings and the former vice president of football operations right here, Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, joining us in studio. Great pleasure to see you here, sir, and CBD history. A sitting general manager, another team here with us.
Yeah,
you
in
said,
studio.
You said something before we started, which I thought was so cool. It's one of the things I'm always curious about when we get a chance to talk to somebody like you or AB when he got the job or Kevin when he got the job. Do you allow yourself to appreciate the moment? And you told a tremendous story before we started that I wanted to share with the audience in terms of it kind of hitting home exactly what just happened here.
Yeah, it's hard. It's a whirlwind, so you don't really have a lot of time to sit and think. But, I had one of my best friends from home texted me, and he said, what would your 15-year-old self be saying if you found out Chris Carter tweeted about you, And it kind of just sat there like for a second. I grew up a big Eagles fan, and so, knowing him and seeing that, it's just it's amazing. And at the end of the day, like, this game is a kid's game. We're all here because we love this game. We have a passion for it, and that's what drives me. And so those moments, you kind of really appreciate how you got here.
When you think about when you decided to leave the business world, come into the NFL, you go Niners here, GM. When you started this, was that even aspirationally something that you thought you wanted to do?
No. Yeah, I remember Parag Marathe asked me in my interview, what's your end goal? And, I told him I'm just one of those people who wants to be in the room. I love making decisions. I love being a part of it. But, I was surprised that I even found my way into the industry, to be honest. And so, no, I never saw this as the end goal. But people ask me all the time, are you surprised you're here? I'm surprised I'm here because there's only 32 jobs. I'm not surprised because I put a lot into it. I work really hard. I try and learn. And I've been around some amazing people who've gotten me here. So to say that I'm surprised would mean that I don't really appreciate and value what they've given to me. And so, in a sense, I'm also not surprised.
What is working with AB here meant to you, and in terms of your growth and seeing yourself as somebody who was not only capable but ready to do a job like this?
Man, that's big, bro. And I can't thank him enough. When he first hired me here, I was more of a the quantitative guy or whatever, and he wanted me to really step outside my comfort zone, step outside my framework. I remember one of the first meetings we were talking about players. And I started rattling off all these advanced metrics, and he's like, no, you're going to watch, you're going to study them, you're going to write a report. You can use how you see the world and kind of incorporate it, but I'm going to make you learn this other side of the business. And again, there's so many other examples, him wanting me to do certain things that he knew I would do as a general manager at times where I'd look at him laughing like, dude, you got to let, that's not going to happen anytime soon. And he just pushed me. He never, sometimes in decisions when it's hard and it's a 50-50 and you kind of just want to, no mas it, he would always be like, you're running the team. What would you do? He gives you that little stern AB look. And, again, he prepared me for this moment. So, his tutelage is why I'm confident. And, even though, you're super grateful that when it happens, I'm not overwhelmed. And I feel good about where I'm at.
When you had the opportunity to kind of dive into the world of film, as it were, what came easy to you? And I know you had the great resources. Hey, help me learn how to watch offensive linemen. Help me learn how to watch linebackers. But was any part of it, were any positions come natural to you? And then what's been the most fun kind of in that journey of, because it enhances your understanding of the game so much.
Sure. I would say wide receiver play. When I did play the little bit of football that I played wide receiver. But one of the things that was really impactful for me was sitting in the draft room in San Francisco with Kyle and John, and the way they talk about that position just made it so clear to me, and it was so relatable to basketball. So, seeing that, you can now just see those natural movements and see who can do what you think that position requires. Conversely, now that you understand the wide receiver position, it kind of makes it easier to understand cornerbacks, right? And then you kind of go from there, and you just build your frameworks, and then ultimately the other positions. We have so many great people here. I got to learn from Chris Forster in San Francisco, and then I got to come here and work for Bill Callahan. Like, can you imagine an education from those two guys?
Yeah.
Like, you'd have to try hard to not, learn something. Ryan Grigson. I mean, just I could name, I could go on and on and on. And so, I've been fortunate and so blessed.
Nathan and I talked about this earlier in the week about this idea of the most important thing in the NFL is alignment. You need to have it ownership, front office, coaching, and it's something that this organization struggled with for a long time, but very clearly has now. As you go on to this next venture, how much did you weigh that to make sure that is, because all you want to do in anything is put yourself in the best position to succeed, and alignment provides for that. How much did that weigh in on your decision? No,
that was critical. When you realize you don't want to be a general manager. You want to be a good general manager. You want to. I don't want this job to check a box or anything like that. I want to be a part of something great. And so knowing what it takes to win, when you study the great organizations like I have, like Paul has, like Ken Kovash has, and obviously we're doing here with the Cleveland Browns, you know that's what it takes to win and achieve those great things. So it was critical. You go into these interviews, and a lot of times people are asking you to shape your narrative a certain way. And I was always very much like, I got to be myself. These people are going to work with me every day. This is who I am. And if it's not aligned, if it's not a match, then it's not a match. And I'm happy to come back to the Cleveland Browns. I love it here. I love everybody here. I'm going to miss everybody terribly.
Well, we certainly loved having you here. I loved getting to talk to you on the sidelines for the games. And as you said, not surprising to me in the least. Definitely sad to see you go and apply your intellect and your kind of the way about you to another franchise, thankfully in the NFC, where that makes it a little bit better. But listen, you're not coming in. It's like, okay, now the first thing people think, GM, now we get roster, and we're going to build this roster. We're going to get ready to compete, here in the NFC North in your case. Well, you still have a head coach search going on. So you not only you're coming right in, and then you've got that right out of the gate to build the alignment you're talking about. What's something that maybe you learned here without giving away too much, but something that you think is a very important quality in the head coach you want in your organization?
Sure. I would say the evenness. The NFL season has ups and downs, bad bounces, bad beats. And, being around Kevin, we always talk about the culture of calm. And that's just kind of how I am. And seeing that in another person and seeing him be so successful, it's something that I just need and want to be around. It's really hard to stick to process and really focus on long-term results when people aren't able to kind of sustain the ups and downs of day-to-day life. And so being around Kevin just really taught me that, and it's something I look for in another head coach.
Now, I didn't go to no private school here, but I was looking at the draft and where you're slotted, where we're slotted.
Oh, yeah.
Come on, there a 12, way 13. That, throw somebody a bone here, help the old guys out here? I mean, can you help us a little bit there?
Is that a funny coincidence?
Yeah, it's pretty wild, right?
It's wild, man. Life, there's so many coincidences out there. No, it's funny. I'm doing my wrap up with AB, and so sometimes I'll ask him, "Can you put your mentor hat on real quick?" And then I'll be like, "All right, now put on
the other one.
Opposing GM hat," and we'll have those conversations. Yeah, we'll see what happens.
You mentioned the amount of people in this organization and just giving thanks to the people who were here for you and you were here for them. It's such an incredible part in the time that you've been here. Who are some people that you wanted to just give some love to here?
Oh, absolutely. First starting off with the guys I work with in the personnel department, the senior group. I was the last one hired here. This was a group that was together, the first time AB was around. So I was kind of that last hire, and they welcomed me right away. It was, incredible. You talk about Glenn Cook, who is, one of the rarest people I've ever met. I don't think I've ever met a more inquisitive person in my entire life. He sees the game as quickly as anybody. It's probably almost to a fault. He sees it like a coach. He can evaluate. He's taught me so much. Again, we're friends for life, so I'm not worried about that. But the Cleveland fans should know that they have great people behind here. This is it's like an incubator for front office talent. Like I'm leaving, but it's like Ohio State. They got 5 stars on the bench coming up, and they're not going to miss a beat. Dan Sagany, incredibly gifted, super smart, detailed, competitive. Love that guy. We'll be again. These are lifelong bonds that we make here. Chris Cooper, just again, detailed, fun, competitive, just an incredible guy. Incredible at his job. But also laid back. That job sometimes requires you to be really like analytical and he's just great because he sees the big picture. He makes it simple. I could go Andrew Healy. That guy's a genius. So I don't know if there's much more to say than that. But he's super competitive, super just a great dude. Dave Giuliani, another person in research and strategy. You'll hear his name again. he's an incredible asset to this firm. As somebody I worked with at San Francisco previously, and I was one of the people who pushed to get him here, and I'm glad we got to reconnect. It's great seeing like a young guy that you were training early, and then seeing him grow and all the stuff he's doing now. I'm proud of him as a friend, but also as a coworker. It's just great being around him. Brian Grigson, who is has become just another big brother to me. I'm not sure anybody would know that we would be so close, but he isn't the person that people outside this building sometimes think he is. I don't know many people with a bigger heart, warm, just a great person, and he's taught me a lot about football, a lot about life, and again, so grateful to work with him here. I could go on and on. I got to thank Debbie Krasinski. I mean, honestly, like I don't know where I'd be without her. Sometimes I just like point people to her and like, hey, she handles my life. Queen Debbie, I call her. She is, she's a little angel. When she wasn't in the building right when COVID started originally, it was tough. There were times where I look at AB, I'm like, you might have got this wrong, man. Like, I don't know if I can handle this. And she came, settled me down, and I wouldn't be here without her, no question. All the coaches, man. I could go on and on, and I'll keep going, but I just want to say that, like, man, Jeff Howard would we just come and sit in my office, sit on my white couch, and we talk about life, football, just sharing information together. I'm gonna miss that guy. Bill Callahan, man. Again, I said it before, but if there's a better assistant coach in the NFL, I don't know. You got something else. You're thinking of something else. He's taught me so much about everything. Scott Peters, Ryan Cordell, T.C. McCartney, guys I've worked with before. Chris Kidd. I mean, again, and Drew Petzig. They're all incredible. I'm one of those people where I just try and keep my mouth shut a lot and listen, open my ears, and I've taken in so much from them. You'll see a lot of people when I get to these positions. I thank a lot of people, and they don't even know that they've had this profound impact on my life because I don't really say anything. I just kind of like take it all in, and I go to my little corner and I write things down and I progress and evolve. And I'm so fortunate here. You guys, I mean everybody, man. I love this place. It's I'm gonna miss it. It's gonna be tough. I'm glad I'm on the other side of the playoff table from you guys because I'm gonna be rooting for you guys every day.
Very well said, and certainly, like I said, going back to Jacksonville, we interviewed for that preseason game this year. You were ready, no surprise whatsoever. I do have a couple of hard hitting questions though at the end to close it out. Shoot. Obviously, 2026 trade texts. Did any of them involve the Minnesota Vikings, which you now are in a position to maybe make a reality?
Oh man. Man, I'll tell you what, probably. I mean, there's a string. There's a whole string of texts. And I mean it in all sincerity. That guy's special. Not just as a person. Like that guy is special. I came here because I wanted to follow him. One of the reasons why I came here, I wanted to follow him, and he's incredible. I think he's a gift to this city, and I as a friend, but also now as a competitor, I'm still going to root for him, and I'm happy. I'm so grateful that I was here, and I want to see where his career goes.
All right, then the last one is just from as a fashion standpoint. I was telling Beau, and we like to enjoy. Said on the sideline, Kwesi was probably the best dressed guy on the sideline every week this season. And so now, as a general manager, I imagine you're certainly on the short list for going to be best dressed GM in the league. There's no doubt. I imagine you're going to have some new wrinkles coming out here.
Oh man, you know what? Best advice I learned when I was younger is listen to smarter people than you. So my sister is an incredible fashion sense, and mine's a little out there. So we kind of combine things. I'll be like, how do I with this? She's like, nah, not this time. So what you see isn't what I started with. That's a whittled down process. Real fast before we go, if I have another minute,
of course.
I left some people out. All my football ops people, I think they're the unsung heroes of the NFL. People don't talk about them enough. Your equipment, security, logistics. Everybody, video, man, like those guys, we're super close. We have our Tuesday meetings. I'm going to miss them. I'm going to miss all the crazy comments, all the nothing to adds. Rob Pavlis, Brad Mellon, Brian Swindle, Ron Brewer in player engagement. I'm going to leave Brad DeAngelis. I'm going to leave people out. I'm a terrible person. Don't leave anybody out. But, man, just everybody, so incredible. This place is special. When I got here, you're so surprised because of all the talent in the building. I don't know what was going on before, AB and everybody came here, but like there was a lot of talent here, and I got to see that up close. And again, I'm grateful.
You know, we always pick the scores at the end of these shows. You do a pretty good Viking horn. There you go.
That's when we're on MVD, our sister show.
Yeah, we do Minnesota Vikings daily out of this studio, too, and sometimes at the Mall of America. So good luck to you, buddy.
Yes.
I really appreciate it,
Great
guys.
talking to you. That's fantastic stuff there. We will get to the scores. We'll get to your over-unders coming up next. You're listening to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. Ohio Business Machine, preferred copier provider, your Cleveland Browns. They have all the X's and O's for your office. Call 216-485-2000 or visit ohiobusinessmachines.com. So we've got scores and over-under to do here, boys. Do we want to do over-under
The good
first?
news is there's only 2 games.
Yeah. I know, but I mean, the Niners one alone is going to have 8 skits involving Spumoni and coffee and backdoors and all of that.
Not today.
No, there will be no backdoor.
No, not in this instance. There will not
Pause.
be. All right, so let's do over-unders first. So last week, Gibbe, 2-3 in the over-unders.
What?
2-3 in the over-unders.
That was enough to gain a game on me?
Segura, 1-4
Good.
in the over-unders.
I like where the trend is.
Your records
Peaking
now.
at the right time. Peaking at 2 and 3.
Your records are an identical 5-4-1. You went 4-0-1 last week. Gibbe went 3-1-1 last week for a
I thought
5-4-4.
I was 2 games up after the first one.
You were 4-0-1, and he was 3-1-1.
Oh, sorry.
But we had 2 differences, and I won the 2 differences. So that's not possible.
2-1. No, you're right. He went
2-2-1.
2-2-1. You're right. Good catch. Good catch. Yeah. So he is 4-5-1. You're 5-4-1.
That's right.
Yeah, that's right. I had a double cross that
That's
I
right.
missed. There was
That's
a
right.
double
There you
cross
go.
on the paper. All right. That's where we stand.
Okay.
All right. So we're you have a slight lead, Zegura.
Slight.
All right. First
Clinging.
one.
Clinging.
First one.
Over or under?
Thank you, sir. Zegura. Yes. Nick Bosa, over or under total pressures for Aaron Donald?
Pressures.
Pressures.
So as by Pro Football
As
Focus.
defined by PFF.
Okay.
Yep.
Nick Bosa.
Greater than Gibbe.
Same.
Okay. Next.
Over or under?
Gibbe, Cooper Kupp, and Deebo Samuel, total yards versus Jamar Chase and Tyreek Hill,
God, I love this.
total yards.
I like this one a lot.
Chase was 300 the last time they played Kansas City, but of course they will have adjusted or thereabout.
Or
What was he,
will they?
260, 270 on his own.
Total yards?
Total
Oh my
yards.
God,
Kupp and
this is a big
Deebo,
one, too.
Chase and Tyreek.
I think I've got to go Debo and Cup because Debo can run.
Over.
I think I'm going that route. I'm going down that hill.
All right.
I'll go opposite on that one.
You're going under. Next.
Over or under?
You didn't
Zegura.
want to go under. I know you did.
Stafford and Burrow minus 30 over under passing yards. Mahomes and Jimmy G minus 30.5. We'll have to make it 30.5 because we don't want ties on the odd chance they tie. 30.5 under.
Who are they? What?
Stafford and Burrow
Okay.
minus 30.5. Greater than over or under Mahomes and Jimmy G total yards passing.
I'll take Stafford and Burrow.
I'm following you.
You doing the same?
Yeah.
Next.
Over or under?
All right, total games, turnovers, and sacks. So last week on this one, just to give you guys a point of reference, last week the number was 4.1. Gibby had it at the over. It was over. It was well over 5, in fact.
Let's just set a number for it. Like
And
the total for
I just like
games.
the point.
Okay.
And you're
running.
And I don't want to do all the math. I like doing the division part of it. I don't like to add
Don't
all the
try to
big numbers.
persuade.
I like
Don't-
keeping it in the 4.1.
That was simpler. There's only 2 games.
Well, that's true. You went under and it was over. All right. So the number this week for your over/under sacks turnovers.
Yes.
Okay. The average for the 4 teams is 3.1.
Over.
Over.
Both went over. Okay.
So you're saying you need to get to
You got to get to
13
4.
total.
You got to get to 13 total. Yeah, to get there.
Yeah.
in 2 games?
Yeah.
I like. Okay. Over.
All right.
All right.
Next.
So far we only have one difference to give.
Over or under?
All games average over/under, so 2 games, Don't look. You're first. 48.5.
Oh, boy.
You're cutting into the scores.
It feels pretty good. Feels like a pretty good number. I bet it is the actual average of the two.
It's pretty close. It's slightly one way. It's not
Slightly
exactly
higher, I believe, would be my guess. Nobody likes to root for unders over.
Give it.
I was hoping he was going under because I'm over too.
All right, so
difference.
Gibby
All right,
can
so
only
Gibby
be
can
tied.
only be tied. That's all he can do.
That's
to
fine.
get
We
to the
can be
Super
tied
Bowl.
going into the
That's
Super
all
Bowl.
that can
One
happen.
game
the
at a
best
time.
that can happen. On the Chiefs Bengals, started this week at 50.5. It's now 54.5.
Jeez. And what's the other one? Like 44?
The other one's 45, so it's actually slightly under the average.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, we got to get to the scores.
Go.
We got to get to the scores quick. Bengals, Kansas City Chiefs, a touchdown separating the two. Bishop,
And 7.
7.
Big number.
Real big.
It's a big number. And typically when I see something like that, I go, what do they know? And I hear 54.5. Feels like people in Kansas City are going to hammer them. I think Kansas City wins. I think it's close. Kansas City 41, Cincinnati 37.
Opposite. Ram it. Chiefs.
Ram it.
Ram it.
All right.
3.5 is our next one. The 49ers visiting Los Angeles. The Rams, the Niners. 6:40 is your kick time. Zegura, lead us off.
Nate, really appreciate you sending me a direct link to theringer.com. You sent me the tweet, and I don't have Twitter, so I wasn't able to access it, so I had to text you back a couple of times saying, Nate, help me get this article. What's clear from reading it, Nate, as I sip my coffee dunked in spumoni, it's this. Kyle's a genius. Jimmy G's a winner, Nate. It's not about flash and dash. It's about winning. Nate, I'm with you. Ram it. Niners. Outright. Victory. Super Bowl.
1 minute.
Same, but different. Rams by a field goal.
Boo. The not Pedro emoji's undefeated so far.
It is undefeated. Yeah.
Looking to keep
All
that
right,
going.
this will be
Totally
fun.
distorted
Championship
everything.
weekend.
Yeah.
Thanks for the weekend. Fun program today. Good job out of you, Gibbe. With all the luminaries, we're back on Monday. Thanks for listening, everybody. Cleveland Brazili, 850 ESPN Cleveland.